Good morning, everybody. We're so excited to have you today at our first fall 2021 Women of FHSS event. We are so honored to welcome a good friend, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, joining us today. I'm Lindsay Blau. I'm the Academic and Professional Development Manager for liberal arts students, specifically Family, Home, and Social Sciences. We wanted to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Laura Bridgewater, and also who is representing the Associate Academic Vice President here at BYU. We'd also like to thank Family, Home, and Social Sciences for sponsoring this event, including Dean Laura Walker, Assistant Dean Jordan Karpowitz, and her student team, Career Services, Bruce Bergen and the OIT team, faculty, department chairs, Women of FHSS Task Force, and all of our collaborative partners for letting us have this really successful event today. Thank you so much, students, for coming. The reason why we do these events is because of you. Women of FHSS exists to help you identify and pursue education and career opportunities, to enable you to uniquely distinguish yourself, your skill sets. We like to promote conversations like this, and we've highlighted over 20 alumna on our Women of FHSS website. And so we encourage you at any point to listen to some of their messages, and we're really excited to hear the message that's in store for you today. We will begin our program with an invocation from current political science student Alexis Arnold. After the prayer, Dean Laura Walker will deliver a life sketch, after which the Lieutenant Governor will speak with us. We'll leave 10 minutes at the end, 10 minutes or so at the end for a Q&A. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Dear Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to come together today, that we are able to listen to our Lieutenant Governor, Deidre Henderson, that we are able to learn of her experiences and what she has to offer to help us understand how to better our careers and our ability to learn and grow as students and as people here in Utah and the United States. We're so grateful for this opportunity and for all the work that has gone into this program. And we ask that thy Spirit be with us today, that we will hear what thou would have us hear. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Good morning. It's great to see you. Oop, I'm stuck. So Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson claims that she fell into politics when she worked from her laundry room in Spanish Fork as political director and campaign manager for former Representative Jason Chavez. She then took office herself as a state senator in January of 2013. During her years in the Utah Senate, Mrs. Henderson gained a reputation as a champion for government transparency and a vocal advocate for women and families. She matriculated at BYU in 1994 and then married at 18 after her freshman year. She and her husband Gabe had 5 children in 8 years, while she helped him get through physical therapy school. Despite her political success, Mrs. Henderson has always planned to finish her undergraduate degree. That's what we may call an untraditional path, and it highlights what an important role model she is to us and our students. Lisa Peck, who coordinates the Utah State Legislature internship program, expressed this sentiment well. She says, "I appreciate the leadership and potential Lieutenant Governor Henderson represents for women. We are so capable in ways we may not appreciate, and having women who lead out despite fears, reservations, and potential stressors is a unique piece of what she represents. It's important to recognize her contribution to our state in this area," close quote. While a state senator, Mrs. Henderson returned to school to complete a degree in history. She is currently at work on a capstone paper that deals with the themes of women, gender, and politics, especially in the American West and within Mormonism. At the beginning of this year, Mrs. Henderson became Utah's 9th lieutenant governor and her own intern. Her internship project was working on solving problems related to COVID-19 vaccine distribution. We are so honored today to welcome Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson as our speaker.
I think maybe I'll just stay over here. Is that okay? I'll take this thing off. Thanks for the live sketch. I've been introduced before, but never as though it was my funeral. So thank you for that. I heard recently that that we should think about our obituaries and what would we put on them as we go through life. So appreciate that, Dean Walker. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today, especially with my fellow undergrads. Thank you. So yeah, okay, go you guys. Don't take 29 years to finish your degree like I did. So, and that's if I graduate in December, which I'm trying to, but I mean, I've been a little bit busy. So I'm really excited. I love the purpose and the mission of Women of FHSS to foster an environment in the college whereby all women thrive and are encouraged to identify and pursue education and career opportunities. I love that. And I love that there are men here today too. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here and thank you for being allies. One of the things that's been really important to me as I've kind of taken this really unusual winding path in my life is to identify the why. What motivates me, why I do what I do, and understanding and identifying that why and remembering it and focusing on it has made a lot of difference in my life and helped me get through some really difficult times. As has been mentioned, I started BYU a really, really long time ago, before most of you in this room probably were born. 1992 actually was when I started. I graduated from high school in 92 and came out to BYU and did what I swore I would never do, what I mocked other people for doing, and that was getting married after my freshman year. And then and it's, if you do that, it's great. It's fine. I don't mock anybody anymore for that anyway. So I dropped out of school and I worked 2 jobs to get my husband through physical therapy school. And things I hope are a little bit different these days. I had parents who were loving and supportive, but made it very clear that after I got married, that was it. And I got no more support through school. And of course, you know, most of you in this room understand the challenges associated with being students. You're poor and it's hard. It's a struggle. And so I worked 2 jobs to put my husband through physical therapy school. I had 5 babies in 8 years. I spent 13 years in what I lovingly term baby jail. Anybody in here understand what I'm talking about? A couple of people, only Dr. Bridgewater. Baby jail was 13 years of wiping noses and bottoms, which was awesome. I loved it. I did love it. But there came a point where I realized that that there were some things missing in my life. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. Over the years, I did pick away a little bit at a time at my degree through independent study. I did not fully go back to university until 2019. But my freshman year when I was here, there was a speech that was given, and it was actually, I wasn't at the speech because it was a priesthood leadership speech given by President James E. Faust at the time at the Merrill Center for the Brethren of the Church, and my then boyfriend, now husband of 28 years. He was at this talk given by President Faust, and he was telling me about it afterwards. And something really struck me that President Faust said at the time, and it has literally changed my life. And it's something that I think about every single day, and that is, don't take counsel from your fears. And those few words, they had an enormous impact on me, and I didn't realize at the time what kind of impact it was going to make in my life. Now, when my children were growing up, my youngest went to school, and that's when I always thought, you know, I'll go back to school when my youngest goes to school. That was my default. And that's when I really started struggling with figuring out what was next for me. I I still do love being a mother. In fact, I've got 2 grandbabies on the way. One is due my first grandbaby's due in 11 days, and I'm really excited. And the next one's due in February, both boys. But as my children went to school, I started thinking, what is next for me? What am I supposed to be doing? And I had this sense of fear because I hadn't finished college. I didn't have marketable skills. I felt very unprepared for the future, and it was a worry to me. I also wanted to get involved in my community and in politics in particular, and I don't really know how to go about doing that. But I accidentally, as Dean Walker mentioned, I fell into politics. I happened to meet someone who was running for Congress who had no money and no name recognition and needed a whole lot of volunteer help. And I volunteered to make phone calls for him. One thing led to another, and I ended up becoming his political director that year. And I worked the entire year for free. I learned a lot of things, a lot of skills, and made a lot of connections that helped further down the road. A few years later, after he was elected to Congress, I ran his political operation out of my laundry room in Spanish Fork, and then a seat opened up in the Utah State Senate in 2012, and because of those experiences that I'd had, I felt, I'm going to do it. I'm going to run for the Utah State Senate. And that's never something that I had thought that I would do. It's not something I had planned on doing, but it's something that I was prepared to do when the opportunity came because of the steps that I had taken before to prepare. But it was also really scary. And it was one of those times in my life where I had to really fall back on that statement from President Faust: don't take counsel from your fears. If you're afraid of something, that's kind of been my check, my little red flag to go ahead and do it anyway. And of course, as I was worried about being in the Utah Senate as a woman, I'm a Republican. Not to bring politics into this, but I doubled the number of Republican women in the Utah State Senate when I was elected. We went from 1 to 2. And I joked when I left the Senate last year, there were more Republican men named Dan in the Utah Senate than there were Republican women. Three Dans and 2 women. But I expected to maybe get pat on the head and set in the corner and ignored. And that was not my experience at all. We had some really, really incredible leaders in the Utah Senate, some men who were very incredible and very wanted to make sure that they provided opportunities. And so I was actually given the chairmanship of the Senate Revenue and Taxation Committee right off the bat, which is a big committee, a hefty load, and very intimidating. I was the only woman on the committee, of course. The other men on the committee were tax professionals. We had the president of the Utah Taxpayers Association was one of them. There was a tax attorney, an accountant, were among the members. And I was really worried about this. And one of the things that I've learned is preparation is really important. So I read the tax code, which is riveting, by the way. I recommend it to everybody. And I held mock committee hearings with the committee staff before I was ever even sworn into office. I learned how to chair a committee. I learned the tax code. And years later, one of my colleagues who sat on that committee with me, he said, "Oh my goodness, Deidre, you were such a natural. I just could not believe how naturally all of this came to you. You're so good at chairing committees, and you just naturally knew all of the tax code." And I laughed. I'm like, "Oh my goodness, there was nothing natural about that." So the preparation, overcoming that fear has been something that's been incredibly important in my life. And another thing that I have had to really think about and overcome is the fear of failure, right? That I have a friend who when he was in college, he's a theater major, and his theater professor always would say, give yourself permission to be bad. You know, be okay with being bad at what you do, because if you're worried about being bad, you're not doing your best and you're not giving it your all. So that's something that has impacted me as well. I have had lots of failures in my life, and I have tried to learn from them. My first time I ever ran for political office was not the Utah Senate. It was 7th grade. I ran for 7th grade secretary, and I was not one of the popular girls. I was really, really shy, and in fact, I was so shy that I didn't campaign at all, and I hid in the girls' bathroom during the assembly where the votes were cast and the winners were announced. No surprise, I lost that race. My mother also drew my campaign posters for me. She's an artist. She's really good. She drew this little fluffy rabbit, and it said, "No bunny would be better. Vote Deidra, 7th grade secretary." So when I ran for the Senate, though, I decided that was changing strategies. Didn't have my mom draw my campaign signs. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is being able to speak up. Being able to speak up anyway, even though you might be the only woman in the room or the only woman at the table, or you might be told that your opinions aren't necessarily told in multiple ways, either verbally or through other ways, that your opinions aren't necessarily wanted or needed. Learning to go with your gut and speak up anyway, it has been very important. As one of 2 Republican women in the Utah Senate, I learned very quickly that when it comes to making decisions that affect other people, when it comes to policy making, when it comes to law making, multiple perspectives are necessary. And for too long, we've had a very one perspective that's been dominant. And it's not that perspective is wrong or bad, but it's not the full perspective. It's like walking around with one eye open. You can see what you see with one eye open, but if you open both eyes, you can see everything. And that's what I learned, is that we really need to be working with operating with both eyes open when it comes to public policy, when it comes to community engagement, when it comes to church, everything. Our perspective is very much needed. And I've had to learn how to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and how to get comfortable with maybe sometimes making other people uncomfortable. One of the things as Lieutenant Governor that I've been really working hard at is identifying and removing barriers for people, particularly women or underserved people in underserved areas, underserved communities, people in rural areas, people who traditionally don't have a lot of people in high government positions looking out for them. And so I have my chief of staff, Jen Robison, is a really good example of this. A number of years ago, I got a phone call from her, and I knew her just not very well, but it was right before legislative session started, and she said, "Hey, Deidra, I want to be your intern this upcoming session." And I said, "Well, that's really nice of you, Jen, thanks, but I already have an intern." It was a BYU intern that year, and she said, "Look, I just got a divorce. I need to get back into the workforce, and I don't know how to do it. I need experience. I need something to put on my resume." And I said, "All right, welcome to my team. You're going to be my second intern this legislative session." And she came and she worked with my intern and with me, and was incredible. And then she went on to get her MPA, and now she is my chief of staff. And when we were talking earlier this year about some of the initiatives that we wanted to work on, she brought that up, and we decided that we wanted to have what we called a returnship in my office. We wanted to have an opportunity for someone who's been out of the workforce for an extended period of time and might need some relevant experience and something to put on their resume and sharpen their skills, have an opportunity to come and do that through my office. And then we decided, well, why stop at my office? Let's just do this statewide. Let's go big. So we did. We've launched this returnship program, and it's like an internship, but it's for people who have a little bit more life experience, aren't necessarily in college right now, and can provide opportunities for them. We've got men and women doing this, by the way, and it's for people who've been out of the workforce for an extended period of time and need that little bit of help getting back into the workplace, and having something relevant and current to put on their resumes. And that's been something that's been really exciting. Politics is awful. It's ugly. Who's the political science major in here? Do we have any? Sorry, you guys, politics sucks. And I'm really sorry that you're going into, I'm sorry. It's okay. This is good. I'm really glad you guys are going to come in handy for some folks down the road. And it's great, but it's terrible. It's right now, it's so divisive and so awful and so ugly that I have a hard time not getting bogged down with all of that. And that's been happening to me for a few years. But a few years ago, I was getting so worn out and tired of the palace intrigue and on Capitol Hill and the difficulties that come with being in an elected position. And I was ready to quit, and really considering not running for reelection when we had big fires in South Utah County. Does anybody remember the Bald Mountain and Pole Creek fires a few years ago? Those of you who are from Utah. So huge fires, and I had several of the cities in my Senate district completely evacuated. And I spent, all day, every day, I probably got about 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night for about 10 days while the citizens were evacuated. And that helped remind me what my why was, why I was doing what I was doing. That what I was doing was not about me. It was not about Capitol Hill. It was about the people that I was elected to serve. And that really helped me refocus the things that were important to me and to my community, and helped me remember that those are the things that I should be focusing on. The last thing that I want to bring up is how important it is to be an ally. And I mentioned that earlier to the men in the room, that thank you for being here and being an ally. That allyship is so important, and it's especially important for women to be other women's allies. I've seen it both ways. I've seen women tear each other down. I've seen women come from a place of scarcity instead of a place of abundance when it comes to leadership. There's plenty of room at the table. And this is something that I've learned and that I've experienced, and that I've tried to help other people experience as well, is there doesn't need to just be one woman at the table. There's room for lots more. I was impacted, I think, well, everybody in this room has been impacted by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whether you know it or not. But one of the quotes that I loved about her, she was asked one time, how many Supreme Court justices is enough? When will it be enough to women on the Supreme Court? And she said, when there are 9. And her point was, we've had 9 men on the Supreme Court. We can have 9 women, and I that really impacted me. There's a lot of room, and I think sometimes women can be each other's worst enemies, and that's finding that ally, being a role model. Finding a role model is really important. And I know we're running out of time, but I want to bring up a couple of examples. A few years ago, I went to the Library of Congress, and it's, anybody been to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.? It's a beautiful building, really one of my favorite in Washington. And I was in the reading room, and it's an incredible room, a couple of stories, and there are pillars around the room. It's circular, and there's all these statues. And there's all these bronze statues of men, and there's 16 bronze statues of men, and it's like Moses and Plato and Beethoven and these guys. And there are 8 statues, plaster statues of women too. But what I noticed, and what was so striking to me, was that the women, they weren't real women. They were allegorical representations of civic virtues, such as law and history and I don't remember what else, but anyway, they weren't real. And it bothered me. And I started looking around the building and then around Washington, D.C. to try to find representations of real women. And there were very few, very hard to come by. And it made me wonder, is that because women haven't done anything worth being remembered in such a tangible way? No. It's more of who's doing the telling and who's doing the remembering. And I think it's really important for us to pay attention to those role models that we do have in the past. There's a lot of them, and who we have in the present. And find people that you can emulate, find people that you can be inspired by, and then go ahead and be that person for others as well. I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had through my life. Never expected to land in the Lieutenant Governor's office. It's just not something I ever set out to do. By the way, if anyone aspires to be Lieutenant Governor, just go straight to Governor. Nobody aspires to be Lieutenant Governor, but it's great. But it is a good opportunity, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm really appreciative of those who have gone before me that have helped pave the path for me to make it a little bit easier. And that's what I hope to be able to do as well for the people coming behind me, for many of you in this room. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope you can continue to work with your school leaders on finding your why, and remember not to take counsel from your fears along the way. Good luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words of encouragement. It's just such a joy to have you here. I think we'll turn the time over now to some Q&A. We're also taking questions from those of you who are joining us online. So can you tell us a little bit about how the mic situation will work? Okay, so if you'll say it really loudly and then we'll repeat it, that would be great. Any questions? Yes. The question is regarding imposter syndrome in various levels of being a woman and engaging in this work.
Thank you for asking that question. I'm still not over that. So thanks for bringing that up. Something I failed to mention was, it was mentioned I was my own intern. When I was first elected to the Senate, I was terrified that people would find out my big secret. My big secret that I'm not a college graduate. And in fact, in 2014, I just finished my second legislative session, and I came back to campus for the first time in many years, and took a class on campus. And it was a big room, maybe not quite as big as this room, but it was a big class. I was a political science major, funny story, back in the day. And before I switched to history, but I was in a political science class. The department came in one day to talk about legislative internship opportunities. And again, I just finished my second session, and I get an intern every year. And I realized as they were talking, I realized with just sheer horror, and it was kind of funny too, that I did not qualify to be my own intern. I could be the state senator, but I could not be my intern. And I was so shocked and impacted by that. And that was the moment when I decided, you know what? There are a lot of people in my situation, a lot of people who've had to put their own plans and ambitions and goals on hold to take care of their families and to put other people first. I am not alone. And I decided to just be open about it at that point. And being open about things is being open about our mistakes and our vulnerabilities, and not that was a mistake, but being open about those things, I think helps empower other people, because it's really easy to look at someone else and think that they have it all together and that they don't have any worries and that they are the Instagram version of themselves instead of who they really are. And so I think helping others means helping to show those vulnerabilities in yourself.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes. The question is about the returnship program and how individuals can be involved in that.
Thank you. And I guess I should say returnship is a trademarked term by, I don't remember, Northrop Grumman or some business. So I shouldn't have used it. Sorry. It's Return Utah that has the return. That's the official name of our program, Return Utah. But on my website, ltgovernor@utah.gov, my lieutenant governor's website, there's a link there to participate in returnships if you want to do that. We also, through the governor's office of economic opportunity, have a place for businesses or other organizations that also want to get involved, that they can get involved and provide their own returnships for people. I encourage BYU to have offer returnships for people. And a lot of businesses across the state have started to step up and do it as well. Thank you.
It looks like we have some questions online, so let's go to those real quickly. So Patricia Hobbs asks, what skills have helped you the most in your public service?
So probably the acting classes I took as a 7th grader. I'm not lying. So I joke that one of the 2 jobs that I had after I dropped out of BYU and was working to put my husband through school was I worked as an actress at the Desert Star Playhouse in Salt Lake City. Has anybody been there? Murray? It's terrible. I know it's really great. It's awesome. Sorry. It's fantastic. I was terrible. I was a melodrama actress for about a year there until I was 4 months pregnant with my oldest child and could not zip up my Maid Marian costume anymore. So, but public speaking, definitely, and learning how to look like you're not afraid when you are afraid in front of a crowd. That's been really helpful. Also listening. I think one of the things that a lot of people, especially politicians, are missing is they do a lot more talking than they do listening. And I think that listening to other people, being able to bring people together to find common ground and in order to move forward and solve problems is an incredibly important skill, and one that's very lacking in a lot of people, and something that I've been really striving to do better at in my public service.
Questions from the audience? Yes. So the question is, what does the Lieutenant Governor take counsel from, if not from her fears?
Well, whenever I get those feelings, it helps redirect me. So I use those negative feelings in a positive way. I feel it's not that I don't feel fear anymore. I feel it all the time, but I use it to redirect and to try to be objective about why I'm feeling it, and to work. The more I do the things that scare me, the less they scare me, and the bigger my comfort zone is. And so that's something that I have found to be very useful. Of course, I try to I do a lot of praying, especially in this job, and especially during the past year when things have not been going very well in a lot of ways in the state. And so I have tried to rely on my faith as well. But that fear is something that I have tried really hard to take that negative and turn it into a positive.
Another question we have from Ellen online is, what do you consider to be your greatest accomplishment?
Oh, that's a good question. So I mean, this is the typical answer, right? I guess I've got a pretty cool title. It was pretty cool to be called senator. It's pretty cool to be called lieutenant governor, but the greatest title I've ever held is mom. And I look at my kids. I have 4 daughters and 1 son. My favorite son, he's a BYU student, and he's a young ambassador, actually, and he's single. If anyone wants to get my number, I look at my children, and now getting ready to have these two little grandbabies, and I look at all of you, and I look at the next generation, and I think my greatest, I hope, contribution to existence is hopefully my kids, and hopefully those are the lasting impacts that can be made. I haven't gone all the way back, but I've gone pretty far back, and I've gone back 9 generations through my mother's side. And I am the oldest daughter of the oldest daughter, like 9 times going back. And I like to think that has somehow made some sort of a difference in my life. And I'm hoping that those intangible qualities that I feel like I have been passed down through my predecessors, my ancestors, that somehow I can impart those, leave the world a little bit of a better place than I found it.
Questions from the audience? Oh, yes. Joey.
One is, how do you balance engaging in politics? Is about opportunities that mentors gave you, but opportunities.
So the question is faith in politics, that balance. And then the second question is about mentorship opportunities, correct?
Thank you. Those are good questions. And I have a really bad memory, so I hope I can remember them by the time I'm done answering them. Faith is something that it's permeates who I am. And so it's hard to separate that. But at the same time, I also understand that there's a public role, and it's very different than my private role. And so it's not been that hard. There have only been, as a lawmaker, as a state senator for 8 years, there were a couple of times where there were bills that I wondered, how to reconcile the way I wanted to vote with my faith. And I found that it wasn't that hard, because I guess ultimately it is just who I was, and I was elected to represent people as me. People elected me, and so I had to rely on that judgment. But I haven't found a lot of conflicts there in big ways. The second question, mentoring. Thank you. Mentoring opportunities. So one of my favorite quotes is, I don't remember who it was, probably Benjamin Franklin. He's always Benjamin Franklin, right? Opportunities often missed because it comes dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. Opportunities really are what we make them when it comes to seeing that for ourselves. I had a lot of opportunities given to me, but they weren't always, they were hard work, like getting involved in politics, right? That was an opportunity. Thank you so much, Jason Chaffetz, for that opportunity to work for you 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for an entire year for free. That was a great opportunity for me. But it really was. And I always say, I'm glad I didn't know at the beginning of that year what the year would entail, because I wouldn't have done it if I'd have known. But I'm glad I did it, because I learned a lot, but it was a lot of hard work. And I think that's what people don't understand. Opportunities aren't always these big, shiny, exciting things. They're sometimes menial and difficult and take a lot of effort. But if you put in that effort, you can really benefit from it.
A question from online. You mentioned the desire to serve the underrepresented and marginalized. As you have tried to do that, have your values of public service conflicted? For example, the value of efficiency and equity. How have you handled that?
No, it's interesting, because I talk a lot about seeing things that have always been there, but that maybe I haven't seen before. And that's how I have seen public service, especially my role. There are a lot of problems out there. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed. And there's professors in the room, so I get really nervous about trying to talk about anything very, very difficult. But inattentional blindness, anybody know what that is? Where there's stuff happening, and it's important usually, but you're so focused on something else that you're not seeing this stuff that's happening on the periphery. There's a lot of that goes on in government, and so when problems get brought to our attention, to my attention, what I've tried to do is really capture that opportunity to see things and to start seeing those things more and more. So, for example, as Lieutenant Governor, I have been able to start traveling the state. And one of the things, I'm also Secretary of State for the state of Utah, which I didn't know before I was elected. Like, that was news to me. So one of my duties is in relation to like diplomacy. And so I've been working, among other things, I've been working with the tribal leaders of the 8 Native American tribes in our state, and visiting them. And I was really surprised and sad the first time I met with all of them. It was over Zoom, and I think it was in January. And they started with this big litany of complaints going all the way back to the 1830 Indian Removal Act. Like, it was bad, and it was heartbreaking. And I thought, oh my goodness, how in the world do we move forward? How am I supposed to help this situation? But as I started going around the state and visiting and getting proximate, and getting to know them, and coming to the communities where they lived and seeing the problems, I started to see what they have been living, and what maybe other state leaders had not been seeing. And what I've seen is that there are a lot of problems that can be solved and that we should solve. There are some that we, especially stuff from the past that we can't do anything about. But we can do some things, and those things we should be doing. And so to me, that's been the most important thing is when things are brought to my attention, trying to make sure that I'm open to seeing what I need to be seeing. And it's sometimes not easy, and it's sometimes really hard, because nothing in government gets done with one person. I have to bring other people along. I have to get legislators to agree to pay for things. I have to sell that vision and the story to others so that they can care about things the way I care about them, or the way others care about them. And that's not always easy, but it's something that I think is important for us all to be open to. If I have time, I'll tell one more little story about this. So this is a terrible story, and I only tell it for the example. Okay, when I was first elected to the Senate, it was January of 2013. It was before I was ever even sworn in. The Senate Republicans, and again, 2 women, 22 men, had a fundraiser the week before the session started, January of 2013. It was this huge thing. It was the Grand America, like 500 people. They had the senators all sitting at different tables with donors and their guests. So I'm sitting at the back of the room as one of the 4 newly elected freshman senators. The other woman wasn't there, the other woman senator. And we had just elected new Senate leadership. It was 4 men, and they were sitting at the front of the room on bar stools, and they were answering questions from the audience, much like this. And Senate President was reading cards that people wrote on cards and sent them up to the front of the room, and he was reading through them, and they were taking turns answering. And he looked at one card and he said, "We're going to have our new Senator Deidre Henderson come up and answer this next question." And I thought, well, that's great. I mean, I'm so new, and they want me to come and answer a policy question. And so I picked my way through the 500 people up to the front of the room, and got up there, and they handed me the microphone and read the question. And the question that they read to me was, if this were the dating game, which of these men would you pick? Yeah. And I was stunned. And I said, why are you asking me this question? And then I said, you're all winners. I handed the microphone back and I went all the way back to the back of the ballroom to my table and sat down. And by the time I got back to my table, I was just shaking. And I was so upset. And it was all men at my table, and they were outraged over what had happened. The thing that was even worse, though, after that breakfast, we had an all-day caucus meeting together where we were planning stuff for the upcoming legislative session. None of my colleagues said anything. None of them thought twice about that incident at all until it hit the news. Someone had tweeted about it or something. And then, you know, and then the new leadership understood what they had done. And I had never felt, again, he had just given me a plum committee assignment and chairmanship. He had always supported me. He had always been good to me. He was not a sexist person at all. But he came up to me after that and a few days later, and he said, you know, I'm really glad that that happened, because I didn't think sexism was a thing. But now I know that it is. I see what I didn't see before. I even see it now in myself, and it shocks me because I didn't think I had that in me. So in that way, you know, we're all going to make mistakes, but when we can see, when our eyes are open to certain things, it's really important to keep them open to those things. And those little experiences can be, although sometimes painful, they can be valuable as well.
I'm so glad you felt comfortable to share that story. I think that was really important for all of us to hear. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. Yes, ma'am. So the question is about expanding the conversation to women in public office and why you feel that's important.
Thank you. It's a really good question. How many of you in this room are from Utah? Okay, how many of you know who Seraph Young is? Some of you. Okay, who is Seraph Young? Okay, first woman in the United States to cast her vote under, we have to put a caveat, under an equal suffrage law that treated all women, all citizen women the same as citizen men. That happened in Utah in 1870, 50 years before the 19th Amendment was ratified. Who in here knows who Martha Hughes Cannon was? Oh, even more, that's good. Who's Martha Hughes Cannon?
She was the first ever
Right, in Utah and the nation, elected in 1896. She beat her husband, this is right, yes, she was his fourth wife. He was a Republican, she was a Democrat. The Salt Lake Tribune called her the better of the two men. She was the first woman in the United States to be elected to a state senate. Again, this is 24 years before most women in the nation could vote. And Martha was the first woman. Guess what number I was when I was elected? How many, now there are 29 senators in the Utah State Senate, and we have been a state for 125 years. I do the math, let's see, 18 years when I was elected. I could be wrong, but I am not a college graduate yet, so don't blame me. What number was I? I guess, oh, come on. Okay. I was 28. There have been thousands of people elected to the state, well, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands elected to the state senate over the intervening years, probably thousands. And there have only been 30, I think, 30 or 31 women now elected to the Utah State Senate in 125 years. I was the 8th Republican woman in state history elected to the Utah State Senate. So I guess I'm taking a really long time to answer your question, but we started off with a bang, and then we stopped. we fell off. One of the things that was so important that Martha Hughes Cannon did that I think is especially relevant now, she started the first Department of Health. She was a doctor, she was a physician, and she was very interested in public health. And she had to fight her colleagues for a lot of things. A couple of years after she was elected, another woman, Alice Merrill Horn, was elected to the Utah House of Representatives, and the two of them liked to pair up on legislation. Alice Merrill Horn started an art collection in the first state's history and art department. But Martha was trying to pass a bill that would prohibit teachers who had communicable diseases such as tuberculosis from teaching in the classroom. Well, believe it or not, that was super controversial at the time. And her male colleagues were not having any of it. So what she did, she and Alice got together and they actually scattered yellow flowers on the desks of the senators to kind of butter them up. And it worked, and the bill passed. So they did the same thing in the House. They scattered these yellow flowers on the desks of the House members. And I did not know about that story until last year when we unveiled the statue of Martha Hughes Cannon in the Utah State Capitol building. We have a statue of Martha because every state gets 2 statues in the US Capitol building to represent them. Does anybody know who our 2 statues are? Yes. Philo T. Farnsworth and Brigham Young. When I told my mother, who's from Idaho Falls, that Philo T. Farnsworth was representing Utah in the state U.S. Capitol building, she's like, well, he's from Idaho. So one of the things that I was involved with a few years ago was running a bill to bring Philo home. He's going to be going to UVU in their new engineering building. They're going to have a nice place of honor for him there, and replacing that statue with one of Martha Hughes Cannon. And so this was surprisingly controversial. One of the most controversial bills I was ever engaged in. And I was engaged in a lot of things that were controversial. But it was a tough sell. And at the day before the vote in the Senate, I was really worried. It wasn't even my bill. It was Senator Weiler's bill. And, you know, he was like, yeah, I don't know, it'll pass or it won't, who knows. I really cared deeply about this. So I was actually driving into the church parking lot the day before the vote. It was a Sunday morning. And I remembered the story of the Tennessee War of the Roses with the yellow roses. I'm not going to go into it, but yellow rose is the symbol of women's suffrage. And I turned out of the parking lot and I went to Costco, sorry. And I bought, they had 2 big bouquets of yellow roses, and I bought those bouquets of yellow roses, and I went up to Senator Todd Weiler's house, and his wife Elizabeth and I sat in her kitchen. He helped a little, but we made yellow rose boutonnieres. I realized, okay, we need a PR campaign for this bill. So we had all the interns get together. They helped passed all these out. I had the story of the War of the Roses. And it's really interesting to look back at the pictures. Some of the senators were wearing the roses. Some of them were not wearing the roses. You could tell who was going to vote which way by which rose was, if they were wearing the rose or not. And we got the bill passed, and we had to do the same thing in the House, and it was extremely uphill. And it just took this full effort to get this dang statue bill passed. And then when we unveiled the statue and I read the story about Martha, there's a statue of Martha that we were struggling with, and how she had to do the exact same thing in the exact same legislative body with the yellow flowers, I was stunned. We can learn a lot of things from examples of people who look like us, who have gone before us, who've paved paths for us. We've all heard the old adage, you can't be what you can't see. And it is not entirely true that you can't, but it's so much more possible if you can. And if you can learn from the people who have gone before you. I always joke that there is no glass ceiling in Utah politics. It's a frickin' brick wall. And when I start getting sore from my head bumping into the wall, I think about you. I think about the young women who are coming after me, and I feel like every brick that we tear down and place down as a paving stone is a win, and that's why it's important. That's why it's important to find your role models and to be one as well.
I think that was a really great conclusion. We'd like to give a round of applause to the Lieutenant Governor today. Thank you so much. From what I understand, the Lieutenant Governor is able to stay with us for a couple of more minutes, or, okay, she said, sure, why not? So feel free to hang around, but thank you again so much. And we have a little treat for you as you exit. So thank you again for coming, and thank you those online for joining as well.